were a bit raunchy and raucous.
We kept you on a really short leash.
Nice to be on someone's leash sometimes.
I was gonna say, with that hair, you better play an instrument. It is so rock and roll. I love it.
I think she's a they. That didn't come out right. Can you do this for, a donut?
People would do anything for a t-shirt.
That's like genius.
We got Jason Mitchell Kahn waiting for us in the green room. Oops.
All right.
Sorry about that.
The wedding planner, like the movie.
He is. He's a gay wedding planner.
Love it.
You know what? Not just that. He has been featured in Vogue, in the New York Times, and People magazine.
I saw that.
He's been listed as one of the best wedding planners of the year in Brides magazine. And he's been hailed as Broadway's wedding planner in Playbill, and even planned a wedding for Mariah Carey's nephew.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What credentials. Awesome.
What a way to close out our Pride Month.
Right?
I mean, we'll linger into July, I'm sure. But
yes.
Fantastic. So I feel like let's just get him on and find out what the deal is here.
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Such accolades.
That's quite a resume. Quite a resume.
It really is. What a storied career. There he is.
Hello.
Hi, Jason. It's lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you look fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
You look
just talking about your wonderful resume. Sorry, Denise.
Yeah. I was just going to say, doesn't he look like he would make the perfect wedding guest as well?
Absolutely.
Or like thank you.
Starring in the movie when it comes around again for the reboot.
The remake of The Wedding Planner. I'm the new J-Lo.
Oh my God, couldn't be more perfect, right?
I'm all for it. I think that they should definitely do that.
It's actually really lovely to have you. By the way, I'm Denise and that's JD. And she's in Florida. I'm in London. Where are you?
I'm in New York City.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, jealous. I love New York City.
Is it sweltering here?
Well, today is better than it was the past 3 days. I mean, yesterday I think we were all at our breaking point.
Well, yeah.
That's my weekend.
It was like hotter than it was in Florida. I mean, it was crazy.
I believe that, yeah. But it's I'm gonna have that this weekend. I think it's or Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are the hottest days of the year so far.
In London,
wow.
You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? Don't worry about me, Jason. I got an air conditioner.
Well, I was gonna say, because not everyone in London does. I lived there before.
Exactly. So I'm one of the lucky ones.
JD, what part of Florida are you in?
I'm in Boca Raton.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up outside of Fort Lauderdale, and
wow, look at you.
My parents live in Coral Springs, and
mine too.
Really?
Where I'm from, that's where I grew up.
Coral Springs girl. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I grew up in Plantation, so
I worked in Plantation for 17 years. Yeah.
Wow.
That straight drive from Coral Springs all the way down Pine Island to Peters.
I know.
Every day, just one straight road to get to work.
So you're doing the opposite, Jason. You started in Florida and went to New York. Everybody usually does it the other way around. They start out in New York and come down.
To be honest, I spent my entire life dreaming of getting out of Florida and getting to New York.
Oh, really? That's great.
100% understand that. I live vicariously now through you for the next hour for the show because
any New Yorker
wanted to live in the city. I was a Long Island. I grew up on Long Island.
What
part? Manhasset.
Yeah.
So New Hyde Park, Manhasset. Yeah. So I always I don't know. It was different in the 70s. The city was a little dangerous. So I grew up fearing the city, right? And then when I was 19, we moved to Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I actually grew up in Niagara Falls on the New York side. And, like we feared New York City. It wasn't even a thought, But now my younger cousins that are like in their 20s and 30s hop on a bus and go shopping weekends. I'm like, Oh my God.
Very different.
Yeah, it's so
In
different.
all fairness, I think it was more dangerous back then, Denise,
I
especially
don't know. I think our parents just put the fear of God into us being
could
attacked.
be.
The Italian.
Right.
Yeah, but I remember the very first time my mom was taking me to New York, one of her like girlfriends said to her, "Are you gonna wear your jewelry on the street?" You know?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
I like that.
the crossbody bag. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the lessons,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
go in, it was crazy. But you know what? I finally made it there. What, 2 years ago? I took a cruise out of Brooklyn and went up the East Coast of the United States. All these places I never went, like Rhode Island and Boston, and so it was really great. And you know what? 3 days in New York was enough. I was like,
Yeah.
I've seen everything. Hi, Times Square. Hello. Yeah, yeah. And then I was like, okay, it smells like pee and weed, and I just get out of here.
Yeah.
It was 90
Well,
degrees. It was bad.
and
Yeah.
I find that when people come in, on a trip, they'll often say, "Oh my God, this is so exhausting. How do you live like this?" I'm like, "Well, we don't. I mean, when you're here on vacation or trying to maximize your time and run
Right.
around and do things,
Shove
I mean,
everything in 3 days. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it's
Right.
it's not. I mean, I do keep a very busy life, but it's not quite like that all the time.
Let's talk about that very busy life.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
telling
Yes.
JD that you've been featured in Vogue, in New York Times and People Magazine, and you've been hailed as the best wedding planner of the year. And you specialize in LGBTQ, right, weddings, but you also planned a wedding for Mariah Carey's nephew.
Correct.
Wow, that's like we were saying, that is
Wow.
quite a resume. I mean, and Broadway's wedding planner. So I assume that a lot of Broadway queers come to you and say, "We're going to get married." So,
Correct.
oh my God, how did you get started in this, and where has it always been?
Well, it was not a linear path, but I mean, I look now that I can look back at it all, it sort of was, with
Yeah.
the universe sort of guiding me of finding what I really love to do. But as I said, I grew up in South Florida. I was a true like drama dork, theater nerd type of kid. My mom still is a professional theater director in South Florida.
Oh, fantastic.
And
Oh.
moved to New York, just dying to be in theater, and that's what my college education was in. I came here with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in
Oh,
theater,
wow.
and like many aspiring artists, my first job in New York was as a server in a restaurant,
Of course.
and and I then and I ended up really focusing on playwriting, which I wrote during that time 2 different plays that had New York premieres, which was very exciting.
Oh, how fun.
And
Yeah.
Wow. More on the resume.
Yeah. Right?
But after the second one had a really good run in New York, I was really contemplating if I had, I guess, the personality fit to really be an artist. In terms of, ultimately I'm pretty type A and a planner type. And so,
Perfect.
all these things were happening right around the same time. And the second job that I had in New York in food and beverage was with the Soho House New York, which is a venue here.
Oh, that's big. Yeah.
And at the time was the only one in America. It eventually grew, and now there's several outputs all over, but it started in London.
Yes.
And very quickly started climbing my way up within the company. And I really didn't, in the beginning, I wasn't super driven to rise up. I mean, it was just happening sort of naturally because I kept thinking, well, until I write my next play or something like that. But I eventually got into their events department. And because I realized I didn't want to work in the restaurant and bar section of the club.
Yeah.
But I got put into events, and I started, initially I was just like an event server, and then they quickly promoted me to events captain. And then they said to me, you're really excellent at talking with the clients. So we'd really like to get you out of the uniform and have you be the events manager and start being the person who's the point of contact between the client and then both the front and back of the house staff. So to be the person to manage all the servers and bartenders that were on the floor and the hostess or host that were greeting people, and then be the glue at the kitchen. So it was a perfect learning opportunity to really learn the ins and outs of events. And in a venue like that, I started becoming responsible for, everything from the moment a guest would arrive downstairs to what their journey was to where we were having the event and all the moving parts and pieces of it.
Oh my goodness.
where I was so fortunate being at Soho House was it was just this amazing hands-on opportunity and education in doing, because we produce so many different kinds of events. So
Right.
we would do things for our members that book things such as birthday parties and anniversary dinners and stuff like that. And then things that were booked professionally, such as book launches and product launches, movie premieres, fashion shows. And then there was stuff that we produced for our members, but like big Halloween parties and New Year's parties and stuff like that. And and then all of a sudden there started to be this desire for some members to get married at the Soho House. And so that became a part of my responsibility. And there was just something from the moment I started doing weddings that I just loved them. I liked the connection with the client that was so much bigger than if you just did someone's product launch or something like that.
Yeah, it's like it's
Right.
it's the biggest day of their lives, and
Yes.
you're the ringmaster of making it all work, keeping it calm, keeping everything going, and ensuring that they're going to have the best wedding possible, so that that's a memory, that they'll have forever.
Yeah.
It's a
And
huge
Exactly.
undertaking.
And while I was, just getting started there, my sister, who's also a member of the LGBTQ community, got engaged. And since I was running events at Soho House, I said, well, there's no way you're going to work with an outside event planner.
Right.
So it's kind of full circle for me, because the very first queer wedding I planned was my sister's to her wife, and they're incredibly happily married.
It's so cute.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
Something
And,
tells me you throw one heck of a party. Something tells me you can plan. I should say plan, not throw. You
Right.
plan.
Well, I would say you've guessed my reputation correctly.
Yeah.
Great.
But I mean, all of these elements of my life kind of ended up coming together in a professional way. I, like I said, was from the theater, and so I really always was drawn to the very theatrical part of events.
Oh, perfect.
And
Yeah.
loved things that could be a challenge. And there's so many tools and training from the world of theater that are just so helpful in events. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
it's a smooth
analogy that-
transition, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
transition, and like that the show must go on no matter what. I mean,
Right.
so
Oh my God,
if
yeah.
something is happening, in the back, like a chef is melting down, or they're out
Right,
of,
right.
you never let the clients know that's going on. I mean, you come out with your smile, you're looking professional, and you. So those are skills that are very helpful in events. And
That is a talent right there. Yeah.
and then the other thing that happened during that whole time was when it was just going state by state, same-sex marriage legalized in New York. We
Yeah.
were the fourth, I believe, and then everyone was just abuzz about all the new opportunities that were going to start to happen in weddings in New York.
Right.
And so it was at that time that I pitched an idea, and I got my first book deal and published the very first wedding planning book for gay grooms.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Oh my God. What a great idea.
Where do you
Thank
find the time?
Gosh, I was going to say, what don't you do?
I was going to say,
Well,
it'd be like 7 years to write a book.
well, and I just wrote my next one, and it's been over 10 years, so that's coming out at the end of the summer.
Okay.
That's awesome. I love that you're
like
so
one a decade is sort of the average for
multifaceted.
me.
Like a gay Superman. That's fantastic.
Oh,
I
thank
love
you.
that you're so multifaceted, with so many things under the umbrella of your art that, the book, the wedding planning, like everything that you're doing. And did you act? Did you say you were in acting, or you like later on?
I technically was, in the sense that, I mean, certainly when I was a kid and in high school and stuff like that, I mean, you sort of did it all.
Yeah.
And especially, if you were a boy, because there were always less of us in the theater, you had lots of opportunities. But I was really someone who was always very fascinated by all parts of theater. I mean, I did enjoy being on stage. But I loved also costume design and set design. And I liked, I had no choice, but because of my mother, I always appreciated what a great director did.
Yeah.
And stage manager did. So I kind of was always someone who, I liked all parts of theater,
Yeah.
and I liked seeing how they all had to work together for a great experience.
So true. In Coral
you know-
Springs, I worked at the Stage Door, the Opus Playhouse, all these little community things
Oh.
for like
A lot
10
of it
years.
there.
I was in a production of A Chorus Line at the Stage Door Theater.
Where do you
Yes.
I think I might have been out by then, but we did like, Camelot and Bells Are Ringing and all these, wonderful musicals, but, all kinds of plays and everything. And I loved being a stage manager. And the thing of it is like you said, there's so many different facets to theater, from costumes to stage managing and directing and all that. And I feel like no matter what you do in theater, you do end up on the stage at some point. Like I had to fill in for somebody once, and I'm like, I don't act, and they're like, just throw the costume on, just have one line. I'm like, oh my god. But you just slot in because like
Yeah.
you said the show
Fire.
is going on. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
and I really I loved I loved everything I was involved in back then. But as soon as I graduated from college and moved to New York and was really in, the
Whole different
cutthroat
story, whole
world
different
of theater in
ballgame.
New York,
Yeah.
it became very clear to me that I just I'm too controlling, and actors
Yes.
have
I
so
get
little
that.
control over their work opportunities, which is very different when you come out of it doing it in an educational environment.
Of course.
But I was really focused on writing, and so that's where I spent my all of my time and energy in the beginning of New York was writing plays.
That's great
Oh,
though, that you got managed to get them on, like it's almost so
My first
unbelievable.
play had its premiere in New York when I was 25, and I just could not believe
wow.
what was happening. And I still kind of look back and I'm like, I can't believe that happened because one of the things that I've always noticed as part of the difference in my career now in weddings and events compared to where it started in theater is there's so much work that I regularly get to be a part of now in weddings and in theaters when you're trying to create. I mean, it was like felt sometimes like moving a mountain just to make a reading of your work happened. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
it's really hard to
Right?
get started.
Yeah.
a lot
I
of
was,
obstacles, a lot
yeah,
of
that's
obstacles. Yeah, for
going to
sure.
ask you that. Yeah, that's got to be hard to get something made being in New York City with so much of that. I mean, like it's like going to Nashville as a musician, there's
Yeah,
so many
totally.
It's
find
so
you to
hard, but
make
so
it.
is wedding planning. Like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
years, my mom had a restaurant in Coral Springs, Lindy's Deli Cafe, and we started doing catering, like because we were in a plaza that had two massive real estate companies, like Merrill Lynch and Stadler, on either side of us. And they would throw these big, events for their clients and all that. And we started catering. And I just remember coming home and being so dead tired. And I was young. And I was like, I don't know how people do this for a living. I mean, this was, a one-off here and a one-off there. Like, I mean, that wasn't the business. The business was hard enough, but when you take on the catering, I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, I can't imagine the stress. I mean, it's insane. You must have
Yeah.
like the like how some people like just through their hereditary, like their blood pressure stays calm.
Oh, I mean the
Right?
byline the byline of my company is keep calm and marry on.
Oh,
And
that's sweet.
Love it.
and
Love it.
so many of my clients and their families and close friends who have been on site, with me for one of the weddings we planned will often say to me, like, you're so calm on site. And that's part of a service that I bring to
Right.
people. You always want
Yeah,
to be a calm service because
Exactly.
it's so
and
needed.
people often say, like, isn't your job stressful? And I don't really think of it as stressful. I think of it as a lot of work. There's a
Yeah.
lot that goes into the planning, but we focus so much on those details. So when the big event arrives, we have all the tools and the team members in place to try to avoid it from becoming stressful. It's not to say there haven't been stressful times
Of
because
course,
there's
yeah.
a lot that can happen out of our control.
Yeah,
But that way, what you can control, if it's as organized as possible, you have that margin of error to move around
yeah.
with the challenges that are thrown your way. I mean, I would say when we were doing weddings the first few months coming out of the pandemic, that felt kind of insane because we were trying to go
To
back
work
to a
within
world.
the restrictions, like,
Yeah, and also just, I mean, the world was not quite ready to be going at that volume, at least up here
oh
in New
yeah,
York. We had
true,
been
true.
shut down.
You were
I mean,
hotspot, yeah.
Right.
we did
Right.
we were on site weekend after weekend, and we were responsible for collecting guests proof of vaccination, and if not, a facilitating
Oh,
tests.
Yeah.
And
It
then
was-
caterers were saying to me, I had 4 servers call out because they have COVID, and then the rental
oh,
company calling and saying
man.
we don't have drivers. And I mean, you reached a point where it's like, I don't know how to fix these things anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah. I can't even imagine. I mean, I
So
think
I'm happy those days are long gone.
right, like the level of
Right,
it was insane back then. I remember Adele crying on her Instagram about having to cancel the start of her residency
Yeah,
because
yeah,
of
right.
COVID, because the transportation team were all down with COVID. But yeah,
totally.
it
And then
was
and we were also, I mean, we in New York here, I mean, people were for the most part required to be vaccinated. But I mean, inevitably, if a wedding was on a Saturday, by Tuesday or Wednesday, I was getting a call from my client saying somebody that was at our wedding tested positive. And it was
Oh,
just,
no.
I mean, it was never a foolproof system.
right.
And the fear was always that it might happen to an elderly guest or something like that, where it could be more dangerous.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, and it was like I always do. I would be waiting for that text or call from a client that had just gotten
Mm,
married like a few days later. So
Oh God.
wow.
Yeah, that's stress. Yeah, that's stress. But I think, like you said, you have that the type A personality, and having that kind of personality that controls, everything, all the different components of wedding planning. That's probably why you're calm, because you've got it handled, or you've got a,
Right.
team in place to handle it. So yeah, I can see where that would be, like having that personality is a benefit. Whereas for me, it works against me. It works against me. Like
well, it's interesting because I think I'm sort of both type A and type B. I'm a little bit of a hybrid, and there's members from my team who are like solely type A, and like my I call her my work wife. She said to me after a few different weddings on being on site with me, she's like, I really don't like being on site. She's like, I've realized this about myself. She's like, because the moment something is 10 seconds behind schedule, it just makes me like panic. And she's like, and
Yeah.
kind of manage all that in a way where you don't ever make people feel stressed. And you understand that, okay, if something is 10 minutes or, 10 seconds or whatever delayed here, we're going to make up for it somewhere else. And
right.
she's like, it's just like, it makes me, I don't like being there. So,
Yeah.
I said, that's why it's different personalities to really pull off a wedding. We have a whole different team of people
Yeah.
that are who I like to be on site with me than really work with me during the week.
Yeah, you got to be
Well,
like
I would
having
imagine.
contingency. You know what I mean? Like you got to have contingents in place for everything,
Oh, and
So
the amount of times that we kind of rewire a wedding in real time, uh, because a variety of things happen. And we also, as I mean, I always say this to people when they hire us. I mean, we are going to plan this wedding, down to the minute, but we also want to be organic and read the room because that's a great party.
right,
And, if, for instance, we say we're going to do, I don't know, a cake cutting at a certain time, and I look around and everyone is on the dance floor having the time of their life, the last thing you want to do is end it
yeah,
Right.
and
yeah,
Right.
and cut a cake.
right,
So, because sometimes you might not ever get that energy in the room back. And
right.
so it's
Right.
also important that even though there's schedules, that you're paying attention to the human cues that are coming your way.
Wow,
I
yeah,
would imagine that you having acting in your on your resume in your past is probably comes in really great, because when things aren't going right and you have to remain calm so everyone else remains calm, even if
smiles,
it's not
Very
everyone
much.
smiles. Yeah, exactly.
pile on, and have
Yes.
your acting skills, pop in and tap into the acting skills to make everybody else think you're calm, because they probably come to you to look to that, right? Like when I would
Oh,
imagine, like, people on their wedding day are usually nervous anyway. So like even if everything's going right, they're freaking out about
and
something.
not
So
not not only the couple, but all the people that are involved with them. I mean,
yeah,
parents who
yeah.
are very
The
nervous,
mother, the bride, yeah,
siblings who are giving toasts. I mean, sometimes it's like I've had, like a sister who's supposed to give a toast who doesn't even like public speaking, and I go to say, just so you don't tell you have to do this in 5 minutes, and she grabs me. She's like, I can't do it.
Let's line up some
You
sheets.
have to. It's in our run of show. You're giving a
Yeah,
toast.
Oh, that's so fun.
But again, I mean, then it's like being, a therapist, because even
I
someone
was
like
gonna
that,
say,
Right.
or a
yeah,
supporting
the
player,
therapist. Yeah.
I have to calm them down and say, this is really important to the person who's getting married. They really want you to speak
Oh,
before they
Yeah.
invite you to do it.
Yeah.
So I need you to see it through their eyes. Take a deep breath. Can I get you,
A shot.
something that's going to help you calm? Yeah, sometimes, and this way we can make this moment happen on schedule. And I like to go up to people about 5 minutes before, so that way they have time if they
A
want to go
little
quickly to the
warning. Yeah.
restroom or over anything.
right.
Um, and so, those are very common to deal with.
You know what I'm wondering, Jason, like do they come to you and say, this is the band I want to use, this is the flower place I want to use, or do they just go,
I have to do that.
you do it all?
Both. I mean, my favorite is when they come to us without, much planned. I mean, because we really like to create weddings from the
Yeah,
ground
yeah,
up, and be part of the initial talks about getting to know the couple. And so
yeah,
therefore, here's some great ideas of places we think this will take
sure.
place, the
Yeah.
time of
Mhm.
year, and then start putting the team together. But everyone, has opinions, whether it's because they've attended weddings or someone else in their family's gotten married, or they've just seen
Something they
people on
want to do.
Instagram.
Yeah,
Right.
And
yeah.
people say things, I'm obsessed with this florist, or I love this photographer. And if it's not people that we know, we always want to consider it, because ultimately we want the clients to be happy.
Yeah, and if
Yeah.
And
you are, it's another contact. Like if
yeah,
we're happy with their work, then you've got
Right.
on your
yeah,
list.
and I'm different than some other planners, and I say this to all people that hire us, as we don't have any restrictions with who you want to work with, unless there was ever a vendor that we had a really bad experience with.
Right,
You
right.
know, most clients are happy that we would have that information to share, because they might not know that part of it. But
Right.
some people have required florists and people like that they were going to work with, and I'm just not like that. Um,
Yeah.
because it's so subjective. I mean, some people think one band is amazing, and other people think that band doesn't sound so great.
Right, yeah. It's so
Right. That's true.
it's
Yeah.
amazing. Like I always think of like a New York wedding, it's never going to be a small affair. Like it's always going to be a big affair.
Especially
And
an
so
Italian family, right? The Italians.
especially,
big
but I
wedding.
mean, like, oh, even in Jewish, like all a big family clans. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gotta know, how big of a wedding was it for Mariah Carey's nephew? It
Ah,
could have been, I mean, was that overwhelming?
um no, I mean, it was interesting. That one was actually in Los Angeles, and
Mm.
I think it was about 150 guests, which to me is a very
Oh,
average
okay,
number.
oh,
that's moderate.
yeah.
Yeah.
About
And
normal to big, I would
yeah,
think.
and it was the bride who was the one that found me and really connected with me. And I
Oh,
remember when she eventually told me who her aunt to be was. She said to me, "But it's very important that this wedding represents us, and doesn't, even though she's going to be there and we love her, and
yeah,
they're so
yeah,
close,
sure.
that it doesn't become one of her events." And so
Right.
um, it was just it's really fascinating. I mean, I having seen so many Broadway stars at weddings that I planned in New York.
Yeah.
Um, it was like Mariah Carey was like a whole different level of celebrity that was attending a wedding for
Yeah.
me. Even like, she pulled up in the Escalade, and I watched all these like various
Oh,
people
wow.
before she steps out. I was like, wow, this is like a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Did
goodness.
you meet her? Did they bring her over to you and
Oh,
say,
immediately. I mean, and it was interesting because the bride had said to me, "Well, we're going over all the personal, flower orders, and I'm getting my mom and I think my aunt or something, a corsage. So I'm gonna order one for her. I don't know if she'll wear it, because that's, you know, 'cause I don't want to, be rude and not get one in case she does. So when she finally arrived, and the groom introduced me to her, and she was like so lovely. And I said, so we've ordered a corsage for you. It's up to you. You don't have to wear it if you don't like. And she goes, tie it on me, baby.
uh,
Holy,
did she
that's
sing at the wedding? Like the aunt that gets up and
She didn't
sings at
sing.
the wedding?
She gave a reading in the ceremony.
Oh, that's
okay.
nice.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
and
Yeah.
she
You
was
probably
lovely. She had a great
steal
time.
the,
And
Yeah, probably not to steal the thunder from the bride and groom, I
Yeah,
would think,
sure.
because they want it to be their day.
Yeah,
That's so
that's just
cool, though.
respectful.
So
Yeah,
cool.
It was really fun.
that's nice. That is amazing. And now you said you got your a decade between books. How
Yeah, I
how
was
do
going to
you
ask you something about
coordinate your like book launch with your job?
that.
Like, does it take you away? Are you doing a book tour? Do you have to leave the team to do the work of weddings while you're out doing the book stuff?
No, I just haven't slept in a year, so
Well,
That's
you
what I
look
was thinking when I
wonderful
answered
for
my
somebody
phone.
that hasn't slept.
oh, thank you. Well, I mean, to be honest, right now, I mean, my work with the book is pretty much done. We're waiting for its in the final stage of being typeset and then off to print. But it was very time consuming to write it.
Yeah,
It was important to me to get it done.
Oh,
it's a great idea, like the first
love
one.
it.
What then the
Yeah.
second one is what is the second one then?
Well, the second one it's interesting because it's evolved a little bit from the first concept of it. What I really wanted to do was an updated version of my first one,
Yeah, because
and that's what
everything's
I
changed
pitched
so
it
much
as.
in 10 years. Sure.
I mean, so much has not only well, there's two things. One, I mean that the writing of that book and the time that I wrote it was really kind of like the beginning of my career, and even though I knew what I was talking about, I now, after over a decade of really doing the work of planning LGBTQ weddings so regularly, I really felt like I had a lot more to say from everything that I've learned from and witnessed.
Right.
So that's really why I wanted to do something that was updated. But when I pitched it to my publisher, um, she said, "Well, how married are you to the title, which was Getting Groomed the first time around?"
Oh,
And I said, "I don't. I never even thought about giving it a new title." And she said, "Well."
Mm.
I think the way the right has become so obsessed with the word grooming and what
yes.
they use to describe, I think it'd
Yeah,
be
I
great to
just
give.
cringed a little bit when you said that.
Yeah. When I went years ago when I pitched it, I thought it was kind of cute and an alliteration,
Yeah,
and no
Yeah.
one
different
was using the word
time. Yeah.
grooming like that back then.
Yeah.
But so that's really where the conversation began, and then we began to talk about, okay, so is there a world where we make this for more than just gay men? Because we're diverse people.
Sure.
And then I was beginning to notice some experiences I was having in the space of the LGBTQ plus wedding world, where I mean, I was a guest speaker in a conference, and we were talking about how we're moving away from calling them same-sex weddings because some people don't, identify by their sex. Some
Right.
people prefer
Right.
Oh, right, right.
weddings. And then there's of course a movement that's like, can't they just be weddings? I mean,
Wedding.
why do they need that
Right.
in front of
Yes.
them? And
I
I
like
began
that.
to think about what really is different about it based on gender. And the reality is very little.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certainly parts that are different in terms of what people wear seems to be the one that is the biggest
Yeah.
disparity.
Yeah.
But with the couples that I've worked with, whether they're LGBTQ plus or even those that are not, my experience has always been with couples who are relatively non-traditional and don't want weddings that are sort of the cookie cutter experiences. And
Right.
so with all
Right.
my couples, however they identify, it's always about starting at a sort of blank page from the beginning and saying there are no
Yeah.
rules, so
Yeah.
let's
Yeah,
design what
I like
speaks to the
that.
two of you. And
Right.
so that's really what this new book is about.
Oh,
It's
that's
called,
lovely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's called
yeah.
We Do, an inclusive guide when a traditional wedding just won't cut it.
Oh,
And
that's great.
it's for any couple that doesn't feel like they feel seen in the existing wedding books that are already
Yeah.
out
I mean,
Love that.
times have changed so much that
Yeah.
I mean, when I look back on my first marriage, when I hadn't realized that I was a lesbian, and I think about like how ridiculously traditional it was,
Mine too.
right? Oh, and then
Before I realized too.
yeah, and then
there.
once I
Well, this could be
figured
a whole other book about.
yeah,
There you
figured
go.
things out, my wedding to my wife was so simple. And I said to her, I want you, this is your first marriage, so I want you to do whatever it is you want, and you just tell me where to be and what to wear.
Aw,
because I've been through this before. So I want
Mhm.
to do it. And she was like, oh my God, we're going simple, you know. And we got married in Ontario because that was the only place we could. She's Australian. And, this was 2010. So marriage laws hadn't come around yet. The only place we could do it with just our passports was Canada. So we picked Ontario because I grew up in Niagara Falls and half my family was still there. Hers, unfortunately, couldn't fly around the world to be there. And it was just my mom and our best friend in a hotel room overlooking the falls with a rainbow. Like, how fortunate.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah, that's
um,
awesome.
and a celebrant, and then we had like a nice little Italian dinner over the border with all my family.
I
Um,
love that.
but it was so simple. But you know what? I don't want to say it meant more because that's mean. It was a different experience and just as lovely, but on a smaller scale. Like I feel like at my first wedding, there was no way to talk to everyone or
Hmm.
say a few words to everyone. You're just
Right,
constantly be
right.
going around and do pictures and do a toast. And then it was just so, overwhelming. And, there were people that flew in, from out of state that I didn't even get to mingle with or talk to. And I think having a smaller, intimate wedding, with my favorite cousins and a couple aunts and just at a great little Italian restaurant with tons of wine and all this conversation because this was the first time my wife was meeting everybody. But it was so nice. Like I have more memories from that than I do the big overwhelming one,
Yeah.
the big one.
The
So
overwhelming one is like the pressure I to talk to everybody, right? To, like you just said, to
yeah,
make sure try to greet everyone,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's probably why. Like I get that whole thing. I had the overwhelmingly big first wedding too, but I had the double wedding with my sister, like the Brady
This
brides.
is new information
Whoa.
for
Did you not know
me.
that about that?
Did not.
About me?
Nancy or Marianne?
Marianne, my younger sister. We
Wow.
were,
I've never actually seen that happen. I
and
always thought it
what's
was just
funny,
like
I was
the
going to
stuff you
ask
see in movies, you know?
ever did that because we when we were kids we're 2 years apart, but our birthdays are 5 days apart, so we always had our birthday parties together. And now, it just happened when we were getting married. We originally had two two different dates. One was like in September. Mine was supposed to be in September, hers was in the previous May. And then we were all moving down to Florida like Italians do. Everybody in the tribe, right? So my mom and dad said, "What if we combined it? Would you be okay with that? Because we'd have to come back up for the second wedding."
All
So
right.
I didn't really care. I was like, didn't realize I was a lesbian either. So my
Right.
sister, my sister planned, like, she picked out the invitation, she picked out the food, and I was just trying to graduate from college, so I was just, wanting to finish that first. But but yeah, like we had the thing, like they back then, like they took you away from the, like, you never did the cocktail hour because that's when they took pictures,
Yes.
right?
Same thing.
And so you don't
Never got to even taste the food that I picked
get
out.
to taste,
And we
right?
never do that now.
Exactly.
We always build our photo schedules to be before the ceremony, so that way the
That's
couple
That is so
awesome.
gets
Yeah.
time. I mean, we always want them to have a little time alone right after the ceremony,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes, and then at least go to 30, 40 minutes of cocktail hour if possible.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's so
Jeez.
nice because I don't remember any of it. Like you said, Denise, you kind of just go through it like an
I don't
assembly
even
line.
remember having a drink. I don't remember what I ate. Like it was such a whirlwind. Yeah, it was crazy. It's so nice that things have evolved to really
Hmm.
take into consideration the couple's feelings,
Yes.
as
Yeah,
opposed to just ticking boxes. Like
yeah.
that's what it was all about.
Definitely. And
Oh,
I feel
Denise.
that the LGBTQ plus weddings have also influenced the straight weddings because people that have attended them have witnessed certain things that feel different and said, I want that to be a part of my wedding, even though that's not how I identify.
Yeah.
And
I
so it's
love
really
that.
just opened up the door for so many people to say, like,
Uh-huh.
wait, I mean, just do the traditions if they're really speaking to you, but if they're not, there's no one's making, I mean, there's nowhere is it mandated that says, like, in order to get married, you must walk down an aisle and have a first dance and dance with
Yeah.
your parents. I mean,
Right,
none of
right.
that is, you just have to
Seriously.
sign the marriage license.
At this
So
point, like, go ahead and have the taco truck.
totally. Have
I
the taco
noticed
truck.
that.
Yeah.
I'm
I've
sorry.
also had couples that, the ceremony, they really would prefer to be much more private and
Right.
don't want
Yeah,
it to be on display for everyone. And so sometimes
I
we do a private ceremony and then just something really brief instead of that moment
That's
for
nice
everyone.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it's
like
what the couple should look back and be like, it was our day and we did it the way we wanted
Exactly
to.
what we wanted.
exactly.
Like that's so important, honestly. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I was at a wedding, but friends, what's odd? I have this guy I went to high school with who's gay, but he wasn't presenting that way in high school. And I was his best friend because I was a lesbian who didn't know it. So we just clung to each other for dear life, like all through high school.
We
And
all found each other back then,
right, yeah. And like one day he showed up in Florida and he actually lived with me for a little while and then he moved back to New York and then he moved and he got into the hotel business and he met his future husband, figured everything out. And he came to Florida because he wanted to introduce him to me. And he's like, you're one of the most important people in my life. And
Aw.
I've been with him for like 3 years now. I want you to meet him. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great, great. And they came down and out of the clear blue, they asked me to do like a wedding ceremony, like read their vows out, on the beach in Palm.
Aw.
And yeah, and it was like crazy because like I'm like, well, I'm not ordained, and I got to go online? They're like, no, 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 this is just for us. We just want it to be us three. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like,
Oh.
we'll do the other stuff later, but this is just for us. And it was so sweet. So I did that. And just yesterday, he posted a picture from that day and said, 25 years later, we're still together.
Wow.
And they're
I love
both like,
that.
yeah, they're both retired. They live in Puerto Vallarta, and they're like two crazy beach bum pervs that just
Ah,
smack on Mexican guys and whatever. But yeah, they're so happy. And it was almost like, thank God that you posted that picture because it was just something that I barely remember. But then that
Right.
like it all came flooding back, and I was like, you know what?
wow.
I took for granted that, like that I was there for this like special day of theirs.
Yeah,
And here they
yeah.
are 25 years later, still together, still married. And I was like,
That's great.
wow. Yeah, it was so cute. But
Awesome.
that just goes to show you that like weddings are different for everyone, you know,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age with social media. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
TikTok weddings and like all the different stuff, people dancing, down the aisles to each other, grooms
Right,
already
right.
and
Like a
bridesmaids.
lot of uh, one thing that is very important to me in the process of working with couples is when we first go to contract to really do a deep dive and try to understand who they are. Um, with my LGBTQ plus couples, I love to learn about their coming out stories and how
Yeah.
the couple met, what the concept of marriage really means to them, because it's really different, and then what parts of a wedding feel important to them. Sometimes they say to me, I don't know, we never really thought about getting married, so this is
Oh
all
my
brand
God.
new, and it's really kind of starting.
Those are the lesbians, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
They're on their
But
second date.
Or
They're
date.
looking for a wedding planner.
well, because I always say that, once we start working together and you're officially engaged and working with a wedding planner, I mean, all of a sudden you're going to start to get a lot of opinions
Oh yeah.
from other people, and you're going to start to see all this stuff on Instagram and TikTok and wherever you are scrolling.
Right.
That might all of a sudden people get like, oh my God, I saw this. I feel like we have to do this. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if it's important to you, let's do it. But if it's not, are you just feeling the pressure of social media or someone else's
Yeah,
opinion?
yeah,
Let's go
that's
back to what the
good.
two of you really want.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so
Right.
important. Thank God you can talk them down, because some stuff out there is just so outrageous that you feel like, you know what? in 15 years, 20 years down the road, they're going to look back at this and be like, oof.
I know. And then we sometimes I have conversations with clients and I say, I'm just asking you this because we're doing our due diligence and making sure that, no, we didn't pass over any idea. And sometimes will look at me like, people do that? And I was like, people will throw money at anything. I mean, it is wild what is out there.
So true. It's so true. Oh my God. And then add the pets when they got
Oh
add
my
Yeah.
God, when they're
Oh,
the ring bearer.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Or the
I
little
wanted
kids.
to ask you, when you did the first book, was it like hard to get a publisher because it was probably not a topic that people were talking about, or did you?
That's a really interesting question. Getting the publisher was not hard. I mean, and I was very lucky. It was Chronicle Books, which is a big fancy publishing agency that's based out of San Francisco. Uh, but then after we signed the deal, really had a complicated relationship. And it was my first book, so I was the newbie in the room and learning, that it's like, even though when you're an author, I mean, you think it's like just you. I mean, it's like a team effort.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
You have a publisher and an editor and a designer and all
Editors.
these
Yeah.
people weighing in. And I will never forget some of the things that they really pushed back at. And, some things we compromised. One was that they didn't feel that the title of the book should be on the cover of the book because we were at a time when, same-sex marriage wasn't legal everywhere in the country. And they thought, well, what if someone wants to keep the fact that they're planning a wedding more private? What if, they don't want it on the cover that, it should just look like a journal. And
Oh,
I was
man.
like, I just didn't feel quite right. And
Yeah,
that was I mean, we really, really had it out about this for a long time. I mean, we were negotiating, and what we landed at was that the title of the book would be printed just on the spine of the book, and then for the cover it would come wrapped in a belly band that was removable. And that
oh,
was the
Okay.
only compromise that they agreed to. And as I look back at it, it was a terrible idea. I mean, most people talked about how when they ordered because most people, regardless, buy their books on Amazon,
Oh,
and so they
yeah.
get them.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of people that said, like, my cover came damaged because, that's what happens.
Right.
Um, so you live and you learn, as they say.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought, I mean, even at that time, I said, if I ever do something else like this, I need more control over these things
yeah,
because,
yeah.
That's a hard lesson learned for a first time author. I went through the
yeah,
same exact thing. I wasn't familiar with the publishing company that wanted to do this. They were giving me a 3 book deal. I felt like I couldn't turn them down. But they were very urban and they wanted me to change. They wanted me to make the book more ethnic friendly. So they, instead of having all white characters or whatever, they wanted some diversity. And okay, I get that, but I don't know how to write that because I'm a
right.
white girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and when it
So there
starts
was,
to not feel authentic, then it
and
doesn't
the
really
same
make
thing with the
sense.
cover, the same thing with the cover. I fought so hard. They gave me like 3 choices. I'm like, none of these are what I wanted. None of
Right.
them. They just look like lesbian porn covers. Like I was, and they just beat me down.
Romance
So yeah,
books.
they beat me down so hard. I was just like, whatever. By the end of it, done with it. So yeah, I mean, hard lessons learned the first time out, big time. But the second time around, you feel a little bit more confident. You know the control points that you want. Like
Yes.
I was really not upset with the editing part of it. What they took one big manuscript and broke it into 2, and it was book 1, book 2, and that was fine because I had a 3 book deal, so I only really had to write one. So like it
One
went.
more.
I mean, my favorite part of the process is after you submit the first draft and you get to work with the editor because I like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
collaboration of it all.
Yeah.
The upfront of like when I was just like alone in a silo trying to, finish my chapters and put new
Right.
ideas in it. I was proud that the project would happen, but I couldn't wait for that part of the process to be over with.
Yeah, I love my editor. She's actually a really good friend of mine, and she's here all the time. And
It's
like
when
Steve,
you find one that you have a good relationship with,
the
it's
thing
really
was
wonderful.
is that she's very British, so a lot of the changes that you were making was with contractions. So like, don't was do not, and can't was cannot. You know, like
Right.
they don't use,
You
they
don't use
use
that?
that little apostrophe T. So there was a lot of those changes, but for the most part, because she knew me so well, she knew my voice, I think, and that was helpful to not make those instinctive British changes. And that, so we got along so well and was able to bang it out so fast. And
Oh, that's so great.
yeah, and it was just like I said, that part of it was a blessing. I'm with you on that. Like working with the editor is so fun because it's their perspective too. Like there was a lot of stuff that she said, "Do you feel like this is necessary?"
Yeah, and
Mm.
It's a little
I'm also
redundant.
so
Yeah.
in terms of writing a wedding planning book, I'm so in this work all the time. I mean, because that's all I
Oh
do is
my
plan
God.
weddings.
Yeah.
So it's kind of helpful to get some outside eyes who haven't planned a wedding to like actually just
Yeah.
are we planning this a way that makes sense to someone who's not talking to a wedding planner in real
Right. It's
life.
kind of like having a beta reader, at the same time and
Yeah.
making the corrections and get that red pen out and everything. But it's like having a beta reader who's a little bit removed from it and can look at it from an actual reader's perspective. So that is right. That's super helpful. Big time.
How
Yeah.
does that work? Do you write the book first and then shop it to a publisher, or do you get the idea and you do like a synopsis of it, and then if they like the idea, you write it with them or
Yeah, I
something?
mean, that's been my experience, the latter with both of these. I don't know if it's a little bit
Yeah.
different when you're writing fiction versus, like a how-to book like I
Right.
have.
So you
Um,
shop the idea with a synopsis, like a
yeah,
treat page.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Well, yeah, without giving the whole thing away.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah, that's funny.
But one of the other things that is really different from this book to the first one is, in this time that has passed since then. I mean, when I wrote the first one, its competitors, which were all written for straight brides,
Yeah,
were these big like journal like notebooks with the ability to write in them. If you wanted to handwrite,
yeah, with
Oh, yeah.
guest
lists
list or
and boxes
yeah,
to check, and yeah, like a work.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what we made Getting Groomed like too, because that's all that was out there. And I remember thinking at the time that there would never be a world where you wouldn't have to hand in a signed contract for something, like a physical signed contract for a
Right.
caterer, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So we separated each chapter with a folder, and that was meant to be like where you would store your documents for it.
Oh
And
wow.
never did I imagine that like things like DocuSign would become so regularly accepted,
Right.
and we
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
so paperless.
Yes.
So with this new book with We Do, if you buy the book, you also get a downloadable workbook to do your work in. So
Oh,
that
Oh,
way you have
love
the tools
that.
online to start building your guest list and budget
right.
calendar. And the nice thing about that for us is it allows us to update that portion of it because it's really hard to write anything that's definitive about, well, most things, but especially about weddings
Yeah.
because they change. And I mean, I am no expert into um, what will become the norms, even in just a matter of a couple of years of really the technology piece of it all. Certain
Right.
things don't change. I mean, we have not really changed the basic rules of how to plan a menu. I mean, foods have changed,
Of
but
course. Yeah.
in understanding what is it, the expected quantities and things like that for people. I mean, that really hasn't changed. I mean, maybe if
Yeah.
in the future everyone's on Ozempic, it will, but for now, um,
Fully vegan wedding.
we just
Yeah.
we have no idea what we're about to become normalized to in terms of
Of course.
where technology is either an obstacle or also can be a big help.
True.
Yeah.
And so I've been referencing this. I mean, we're just starting to see these stories of some really high-end florists and designers are now, rather than doing like in-person mock-ups of samples or renderings, they're actually creating the whole wedding through technology, and a couple can put on like virtual reality glasses and go and see what the room is going to be like when it's fully lit up.
Oh
Wow.
my God. Yeah.
Now,
That is
if that
so
becomes like
cool.
industry standard and not just for the high-end luxury world, I mean, we want to have that
Right.
in our calendar that you schedule your virtual reality
Exactly.
experience, so
Oh
Wow.
my God, that's awesome. So you could even like there may even be a day where you have like AI waiters or whatever, like robots
totally.
Yeah.
taking the
I mean,
food at the
who knows where
cocktail.
we're going? I mean, one of the things I've always loved so much about weddings is that I think ultimately there's stuff that you cannot create through technology
Right.
that people love.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
You cannot create energy in a room. You
Right.
cannot create emotion. You cannot falsify the experience of being sat at a table with great people
Yep.
after you've
Yep.
missed a ceremony. I mean, these things are not going to go away, be replaced by
Exactly.
technology. But how we
Exactly.
get from point A to point B really might.
It might.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. You don't think that. I noticed in the last few weddings that I've been to, in the last, say, the last 10 years or less, they stopped doing the whole bride cutting the cake thing as being part of the party. Like all of a sudden they're serving the cake. And, I'm like from the old school parties, and I'm
You
like,
smashed it in your husband's face.
yeah, when did they do the cake? And it's like, oh, they did it in the corner over there before, and
Yeah.
people aren't doing, like you said before, like the mother and the son dance and the father and the
yeah.
bride.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I've
guess
that's
had
different.
people may
many
want
couples who
to,
didn't
but
want a wedding cake altogether. So,
yeah, that's
There's
interesting that even
cupcakes,
that stuff
donuts,
changes.
there's all
Yeah,
kinds of different takes on things.
well, it's a perfect example
right.
of when you say to couples, we should do what is important to you, what speaks to you. If a couple says to me, well, cake is really not my favorite kind of dessert, why would you
Uh-huh.
say
Let's
so?
find out
You
what
know?
yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that's
If you're much more of like a donut person, you should have donuts rather than cake.
of course.
And then do you find it like a challenge too, because you have to work with people's budgets? Like, so like
Oh, yes. I mean,
you come across a lot of time, like the person comes with the big budget ideas and the small actual physical budget. Like, do they give you like a hard time about making that work? Have you
well, I
you
mean,
creative?
we try to be really before we're in it too deeply. If a couple says to us, "This is what we have to spend," and this is what we want, and I understand both and say there's no way that that can happen.
That's
Yeah.
That's like our first conversation. So
realistic
something
when you
has to
know.
compromise
Right.
there. Either you have to be willing to spend a little bit more, or you have to compromise on what you want the wedding experience to
Yeah,
be
those are
like.
the really only two options, isn't it?
Yes,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I think couples come to us with budgets, but they're not, I wouldn't really call them budgets. They're more like, this is a number that we feel comfortable spending. But
Right.
until you actually do the work of budgeting at a wedding and everything that goes into it,
Right.
it may or may not be a realistic number to get everything that you want. And every client is different in terms of what they want to achieve within that spend. I mean, sometimes it's a number that really is meant to cover everything and anything related to a wedding. And some are like, oh, but like my outfit doesn't count as part of that budget.
Yeah.
Or
Mm.
like, because for whatever reason. So we have to go through it in that kind of detail to understand,
Right.
like,
Right.
Oh
should we
yeah.
be, should money for your jewelry be in this budget, even if that's something that we're not really managing as the planner of the event.
Right.
Because for some it is and some it isn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
All
That's
they got to
interesting.
consider everything. It's such it's a lot of decision making, and
And
it's lovely that you're there as as some kind of guidance, like I'm an only child, so it's like I didn't have a sister to go to, and I didn't, or
right.
anybody.
Or have a wedding with.
Yeah, but my mom was like super involved. She was really good about it, but it was overwhelming. And at that time, my husband was just like, "Oh, just tell me when I got to my fitting, and I'll be there." So it wasn't, he was no help whatsoever, and his sisters weren't really involved in it, and his mom was like, "Let me know if you need something," and that was it.
Right.
And it was like I was on my own with a lot of decisions, and it was like I would have killed for somebody like you, that I could
Yeah.
have went to and said, is this okay or is this dumb? Like, is this just stuff like that, because you do want it to be like the greatest day of your life, and if you're not, I didn't grow up having a vision of what my wedding day would look like. Like I
Yeah.
was busy doing
Me
other
either.
things. So yeah,
Right.
like there was no one to steer me into what a great wedding would be. So I just felt like very on my own. And
Mhm.
like I would have killed to have somebody, to talk about those things with, or to, just manically text at all hours of the night.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I don't
that,
think they had them back then, Denise, right? I mean,
oh,
I don't know. I think I got married before you. I got married in 1982, but that was
90.
No, I mean,
I don't
there
think
are
wedding
way more
planners.
there are way more wedding planners now. I
Yeah.
mean, back
Yeah,
then there were wedding planners for like, only in the luxury market.
I was
right.
And
actually
Where
at a
you did
venue.
like
Like
the
I
venue,
yeah,
the
I
venue
had
like assigned you a person that would help
yeah,
you
right.
that's what exactly
just at
what it
the
was.
venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's all changed a lot. And
Yeah.
now there are a lot of wedding planners. And a lot of venues that won't work with couples if they're not going to bring a wedding planner into the project.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
no. Ooh. Mine
Interesting.
I did it at a venue that like said here's a list of flower places we use, here's a list of
Mhm.
bakeries we use. So that part of it was okay, but you still had to make the decisions, and I think that was what was always the stress because
Yeah,
this wasn't confident.
helping our clients make decisions
Hmm.
sometimes is like, one of it's not that it's the hardest task, but I mean, it's a very regular task.
The biggest
Um,
probably, right? Like
yes,
it's really
because
that
also, I mean, I have my personal taste and opinion, I mean, about how I design things and what I like to eat and things like
Yeah,
that. But it's
Yeah.
really what a couple wants and what reflects them and
right.
the kind of vibe that they want. And so, and a lot of people will ask me like etiquette questions.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I will say, I mean, this is what was done back in the day, but that's not really what we're doing right now.
Right,
Mm,
So I
right,
mean, like who created some of these etiquette rules about weddings anyway? And if they don't
right.
speak to you, I
But you
mean,
know what they probably need to
people
do?
wanted a definitive answer to these things,
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
sort of like I turned it into a question of like, well, let's unpack, who this relative is and why they need a plus one, or.
Right, right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's
Like,
true. The
that's so
plus
lovely
one.
to have someone there,
Yeah.
helping you, and guiding you and asking you those questions because, like you said, everything is so different now. And I think that's the cool part about our community is that we own that now. You know what I mean? Like we can
Yeah,
do and be whatever we want and have
Hmm.
whatever kind of wedding, we want. And I think it makes it so much more intimate and again, memorable. And it's I think it's different. Like I said, back when we did it, our husbands were just like, whatever you want, it's fine.
Right?
But I
What
think
color
when it's
do I
like
have to wear? And
when
I'll
it,
show up.
yeah, but when it's like two men or two women or what however they identify, whatever in our community, it's a blend of both of their decisions and their thoughts and their
Yeah.
wants and and I think it's
Point.
much more special. Yeah. What you're
That's a
doing is God's work, Jason.
I'd like to ask this question if it's like I don't know what the word is. If there's an answer. What is the average like wedding? Like I know there's like super high end and then there's like super
I just heard
tight
something on
budget.
CNN sick because they
Like
were
an
they were
average that's
talking about Jeff Bezos' wedding in the
oh gosh,
right
yeah, like
I mean that's not average.
millions, right? So no, so that then they were talking about the average, and they went with 35,000 as
I
the average.
mean, well, listen, every time I hear stories like that, I think the problem is if that's some kind of national average, it makes no sense in cities like where I
yeah,
work in.
Right.
So, I
yeah,
mean, $35,000 for you, it would be really hard to do a wedding in New York for that. And
Of
that
course.
wow,
certainly wouldn't be
Right.
an event where they would hire a wedding planner and, have all sorts of bells and whistles to it.
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that's, I've said that to many clients when they come to me and they're like, but I've heard weddings cost this. I'm like, right, but if you're a national poll makes no sense for a
Yeah,
wedding.
and the thing of it is like New York, Miami, big glitzy Los Angeles, whatever, big glitzy places. You're not going to get anything for 35,000. Maybe in Bozeman, Montana, you'll
Well,
have a
right,
exactly.
barn
If you're doing
wedding.
a
Yeah,
wedding in
yeah,
a
right,
backyard, you don't have a venue fee, and
yeah,
right.
you have no neighbors, so you don't have to worry about hiring
right,
valet,
right.
like all the
So
things that
I
people.
think that's a really tough question to answer because it
Yeah,
would depend on where and what and how many and all that. Yeah, I don't know.
that's true. Yeah, how many guests? But
Mhm.
yeah, I didn't know if there was even an answer to that question because that
I
I
don't. I
know.
mean, for me, there isn't. We've worked at all ends of the spectrum. I mean, we've done weddings that you can pull off that would be considered budget weddings, and then we've done ones that are in the luxury spectrum as well.
Wow.
So,
That
and
must
then
be fun.
everything in between. So I like to, I try to tell my clients, I mean, I really don't have any minimums in that sense of what you want to spend on your wedding. I look for clients that I feel a connection to and feel that we can put on something cool together. But they do have to be realistic about the money that they have and if they can afford them, the kind of wedding that they want. And like I said, kind of when we were talking about the budget before, if those two things aren't in alignment, something has to give. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of times what our work is at the very beginning of the project.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be upfront about stuff like that, or it's just going to be a hot mess.
Yeah, and I like to be really transparent in the process about money and never at the end of a project say to someone, I mean, this like ballooned out of control. So that way,
Oh my
every
God.
time you're making
Right, exactly.
Like a home renovation. Yeah. Wow. Well, Jason, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your schedule to be with us.
Yeah.
Because now that we hear
It was my pleasure. You both are fabulous and really fun to chat with.
we're going to get this show up super quick because it's still summer and there's still weddings to be had. So we'll get this up really quick and maybe inspire people.
That sounds great.
I can talk to you for like another hour with the questions, and I'm like getting married.
I know it's amazing that even in an hour, it's like you've like barely scratched the surface.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so fast. But we will let you continue on. Please have Rachel let us know when the book comes out so we can put something up on the website and
we'll do.
And
socials.
Your first book is on Amazon, did you say?
It's no longer in print, so
okay.
All the more reason for a new book to be coming out.
I was going to say, we want the modern one now. Yeah, we want
that one's outdated. It's old.
Updated version.
Yeah.
Great. Well, listen,
all right.
thank you again so much. So appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Great.
Bye.